Except for one thing, I was the happiest boy alive. But it's hard for any boy to be completely happy when he wants something so bad, it gnaws on his heart and gets all mixed up in his dreams.
Well, I bet a lot of you can relate to how he feels. He was all eaten up inside, wanting them dogs. From 1974, Where the Red Fern Grows, based on the novel by the same name by Wilson Rawls. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to A Bard Stories. Tonight we have one of my favorite movies of all times. There will not even be a score at the end of it. I'm just going to tell you right now. Get the tissue paper and enjoy it. We have the story of young Billy Coleman, a boy eaten up by the desire to have 2 hunting dogs. One day he was having a talk with his grandpa about why the good Lord just didn't give them to him. Grandpa said, "Well, Billy, you got to meet the Lord halfway. It builds character." Billy didn't know it at the time, but as the months went on after that conversation, he was eaten up with a desire to have those 2 dogs. So he did a bunch of work around the community, around the house. He never let his chores fail or his learning. He cleared fields, baled up corn, collected eggs and sold them, cleaned out hog pens. There ain't a worse job around than that. He saved that money, and one day he went to go have his grandpa, who owned the local store, order them dogs for him. Billy ran into a dilemma there. He knew that his daddy needed a new mule. Family had other things they could really use. But Billy, he made that decision to have his grandpa order from Kentucky 2 red-bone hounds. Time passed on, and, well, one day they finally came in, but they didn't come to Grandpa's store like Billy had hoped. They ended up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And that's a long walk from where Billy and his family lived. You say, how do I know that? Well, I live in northwest Arkansas, and Siloam Springs, which is where some of this was filmed, is about 30 minutes away. Tahlequah's about an hour, Vian about 45 minutes. So I've got a really good guess of time, but, well, when I moved out here and was working in construction, one of my subcontractors and I got to talking about this film one day, and he told me he actually was part of the filming. He was one of the coon handlers. You see, he was a coon hunter. So I got to see these places firsthand, where they were actually filmed. Not Natural Falls, where everybody gets to go because it's a state park, but he took me to some of the spots where they actually ran the dogs. There are a few sounds in nature to an outdoorsman like myself that mean, well, they mean more than I can describe. A loon calling on a lake as the sun rises, the mist coming off of it. A bull elk bugling in the hills. A wolf howling in the evening. Those sounds, they spark something inside you, something you can only feel and experience yourself. Well, coon dogs on the chase in the hollers in these Ozarks, that's a sound I've added to that list. It's a sound that I can't explain to you. And then when they tree a coon, it's a completely different sound. So this movie had a little bit of magic for me. Well, Billy did get ill, and he did get those dogs. And on his way back, they found a heart in a tree. Carved in that heart, the names Dan and Ann. Well, that's where the dogs got their name. Old Dan and Little Ann. Their first hunt together. Well, that was something special. He had promised them that if they treed that coon, he'd do the rest. Well, those dogs ran that coon all right. They brought it to tree. Big sycamore tree. He worked on that tree all night until he fell asleep out of pure exhaustion. His family, out of fear something had happened for him, came looking for him and found him the next morning. His mama was going to make him come home, and he said, "No, ma'am." He gave his word to those dogs that if they did their part, he would do his. His mama said, "Come with me." "No, you're not. Do I need to spank you on top of all the other trouble you've caused?" And he paused for a few minutes and he said, "Yes, ma'am." He had to keep his word. His daddy, who was there, agreed. Man ain't much if he ain't got his word. His grandpa just gave him an amen. That amen said a lot to his mama. She left him with a couple hard-boiled eggs and some biscuits. Told him to eat the 2 eggs, share the biscuits with the dog. And his daddy went and got a man-sized axe. Billy cut down that tree with that first coonskin hat. His mama made him a cap. Oh, the next few seasons, boy, those dogs, their reputation and fame spread throughout the Ozarks, Oklahoma and Arkansas. We come across at this point two boys we'd been introduced to a little bit earlier in the movie. Rainey and Reuben Pritchard. Bad folk. Mean folk. Well, they wanted to make a bet with Billy because they had a coon up in their neck of the woods called the ghost coon that nobody could tree or catch. Billy wouldn't take that bet, but those boys, well, they managed to egg it on with Billy's grandpa. And a sum of $2 was settled that Billy's dogs could tree that coon. The next night, Billy went out, and sure enough, that coon led him on a wild chase and then disappeared, just like the Pritchard boys had said. Well, old Dan and little Ann, they were veteran coon dogs. They knew he was still there. They sat and they bayed. And Billy, well, he was a veteran by now and knew something was up. After some time, they figured out where that coon had gone. It'd been losing everybody in an old mill slough, and Billy climbed up there and saw it. And out of respect for that coon and how wily and cagey it was, he told the Pritchard boys he wasn't going to kill it. Well, their dog had broke loose and started coming to them. Ann and Dan went and attacked that dog to defend Billy, and the Pritchard boys and Billy got in a fight because Reuben was going to grab Billy's axe and go kill his dogs. As Reuben grabbed it and started to run, Billy tripped him. Reuben fell on that axe. Well, I think y'all can figure out what happens if an axe goes through your chest. That destroyed Billy, and he wasn't going to hunt anymore. Sometime later in the story, they were invited over to Billy Grandpa's house for supper. Now, Billy's dad knew something was up. After supper and some talking, he asked him what was up, and well, his grandpa produced a flyer that they were having a coon dog tournament. And after some powerful thinking, Billy said he'd do it. I'm not going to tell you what happened during that tournament. You need to see it for yourself. But I'm going to say this, that after it, Billy was out hunting one night and something happened to Dan. Dan died. They buried Dan there by their farm. Little Ann, she went and laid next to him, and after some time died of grief. Brother and sister. A little bit of a time pass happened again, and well, Billy's family's getting ready to move to Tulsa for a better job and better life. Just before they were ready to leave, Billy told his dad, I'm going to go out and see him one more time. Well, you can see when he got there, he saw a red fern. That's where I'm going to leave you, my friends. If you're going to watch this movie, you're going to cry, you're going to laugh. Something inside of you might stir. So if you ever are in Arkansas or Oklahoma, yeah, walk away from the city lights one evening during the fall or winter. Get up on a nice tall overlook someplace and listen. You might hear the sound of some coon dogs running. And well, it's magic at night.